So I'm trying to figure out what I want to say. Um, I tend to spend most of my time uh, trying to build community, trying to find spaces of hope. As corny as that sounds, uh, I do strongly believe in the arc of justice, uh, and at the same time, it doesn't happen by itself. And I get pretty frustrated when our community, and not just the queer community but in general, um, doesn't really pay attention to what's happening around us, uh, on all kinds of different levels. There isn't anybody that should be surprised that Roe versus Wade was overturned today. There shouldn't be anybody that's surprised. That's a long game that's being played and has been being played for decades. Um, and and we've taken for granted that big things like that don't happen. Big changes, like once it's in law, it's in law. That's not true. That's not true. And we don't know our own history. And our younger generations, many, are not being taught our history. Right? We talk about this all the time. We don't know the history, the actual. We're not taught the true history of slavery in this country, or Jim Crow, or the civil rights movement, or the indigenous genocide. We're not taught any of those things. But there's so many more things, excuse me, that we're also not taught. Um, and and that gets less and less as we go along. We're kids in school today are taught less than I was when I was in school. There's a lot that I know about our history that is not taught today in school. And there are reasons for that, so that things like Roe versus Wade happen, right? So that we're, as a country, as a society, complacent, um, presumptive about, just because it's the right thing to do or the way it should be, that's the way it's going to be. There's a whole world history going back centuries of fighting to just simply not be erased and not be killed and not be excluded. And for some reason, we seem to think that we've arrived at a place where we don't have to keep fighting for that. And it's not true. Humanity hasn't changed. International relations haven't changed. It's none of this, none of what we have, none of what we enjoy in terms of whether it's resources or independence or privacy or anything, really. None of it happened just because it happened. Somebody died for it. Somebody fought for it. And the fight never, ever ends. That's why it becomes kind of tiring to be human, right? Because we don't ever actually get to a place where we don't have to worry about it anymore. Because somewhere, sometime along the line, someone's going to want to take it away. Always. And that's not ever going to change. And, at least in this country, we have been very well taught not to worry about it, and not to learn about it, and not to think about it. And this is why it's so dangerous. Because, Roe versus Wade is huge, so huge. It's also the door opener. And there's more to come. And with a couple of exceptions, this is not an old court. This court's going to be around for a while. Doesn't matter if Orangehead ever goes to jail or not. Doesn't change the appointments. They're not going to all of a sudden lose their appointment simply because the person who appointed them may or may not get convicted of something. We're stuck with this court for a long time. And we need to know that. We need to be aware of that. And we need to recognize that we cannot depend on the Supreme Court to be the one to ensure our rights. The right people have to be elected to do that. We have to engage in everyone's least favorite thing. I say everyone, except maybe Jamie and Elizabeth. We have to engage in politics. We have to engage in our city. We have to engage in our communities, and show up, and not just show up every time there's a rally, every time there's a march, every time there's a protest. Those are the easy things to do. That's the sexy part of so-called organizing, because it doesn't really actually do a whole lot sometimes, if that's all you do. But if you're not engaging, and yeah, I'm going to say it, if you're not voting, and if you're not learning about who it is that's making decisions for you, then every protest you've ever go to isn't going to matter, because that's not the end point. That's the beginning. The organizing still has to happen. The speaking up still has to happen. The showing up still has to happen. The education still has to happen. All of these things have to happen. The running for office has to happen. I grapple with that one a lot. But, at the end of the day, no, nothing we have gets to be taken for granted. It just doesn't. Because that's not humanity. It never has been. And, I sincerely, there's already rallies and all kinds of stuff being planned for today, tomorrow, next few days. And I really sincerely hope that it doesn't stop there. Because it can't. And I'm just going to say, going back to where I started, I tend to live on the side of hope and all these kinds of things. More than anything, what I don't have time for is to give up. And I've met a lot of folks in my life, a lot of the people that just check out and they have zero faith, and they're going to tear down anyone that they don't agree with on something, or the system's broken, let the system die. Well, are we prepared for the harm that's going to come in a dying system? Are we really prepared to just simply let that happen? Because if you are, I'm going to have to move on, because that's not what I have time for. So, yeah, this just, there's a lot of work to do. And at some point, some of us are going to run out of time to be able to do that work. So, we're going to have to get to it. Thanks, y'all.